Hey, I'm Alex Newsom.
And I'm Alexis K. And you were probably wondering who the hell we are.
Well, we're marketing and advertising people who come from Apple and Facebook, Method, Toyota, and Hulu.
And Hulu is where we met.
It is weird.
And we bonded very quickly over two things: McDonald's and talking shit in Slack.
I do remember being really excited the first time you were like, oh, you know what I really need? And I thought you were going to be like a tall glass of wine or something. And you were like, I need a cheeseburger from McDonald's.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this girl.
We can bond.
We can bond over this.
Yeah. And it's like we got real quick.
We did, yeah.
And then I think once you get real with someone you work with, then you're like, I hate it here.
Yeah, totally.
It's like you're safe. You're safe to
You
admit.
pierced the veil.
Yeah. And I mean, I left Hulu in 2020 and I was like, I just can't do any more of this. I was like, I'm going to go write a book. And then the pandemic happened, which is like just amazing timing. And that's when I went to go work with founders. And founders, I think like it was such an interesting time because it was the first time I realized, and even though I had like left this corporate structure, I was like, there are people who are just making their dreams come true and just taking a chance and believing they can do something better than anyone else or better than like or just something that's has never been done before. And like the balls that takes is so inspiring. And
did you ever feel that way about yourself when you were doing any of these corporate jobs?
No, I was like, I felt so lucky to be at these companies and that I was made to feel like, oh, like this, you are lucky to be here. And I mean, when I like took a break, I genuinely was like, I'm just taking a break. I've like got to just like tap out for a minute. Let me go do something really for me, like really creatively for me.
Yeah.
But just because of the world, and it's like I never went back into corporate. I just started picking up freelance projects and working with these quirky people doing all kinds of things and dipping my toes into industries I hadn't been to before. And you and I kept talking at that time. You'd gone in, you were full-time at Apple then.
Yeah.
And I just kept trying to get you to come join me on the dark side. Because I knew that you felt, I think, the same way there as you did at Hulu.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that there was a world outside of that. I was having the pep conversations, you know, every morning. Okay, you have 35 more years of this. You can do this. Okay, you have 34 years and 364 days to do this. And it was just like, oh my God. And then there was a point where I was just like, and we had talked about this, you know, over our dinners where I was like, I can do better for myself, not in this environment, and I can make something for myself. And I think you had, like you said, you were learning that from the founders that you were working with. And then it made sense for us to, you know, combine our powers combined.
We finally did it.
And
so we started our own coaching-based creative studio.
Called Stab.
Stab.
Yeah.
Story and brand is kind of the acronym for Stab.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just like how we used to feel when we had real jobs.
Yes, wanting to stab people.
And so we're bringing the spirit of that into consulting work that we now get to do together and work with more people who inspire us.
Yeah.
And
I think one of the things in our journey to start this business that really made me feel aligned was when we decided to take coaching certification and kind of combine, you know, yes, you have a company and you want to build a brand, but actually what's the step before that, which is who are you as a person and what are your values and how does that filter through everything that you do so that the impact your company has is felt on a human level and not just the success metrics.
Yeah.
And that kind of has led us now to a podcast.
I know. And we're like, what business do we have having a podcast? Other than
what business don't we have having a podcast?
Yeah, you can see my internal monologue. But we love to, I mean, it's like McDonald's and talking shit.
Totally.
And that's the foundation of just everything that we do. But all joking aside, like this is a chance for us to talk to people like those founders and friends and like artists and authors and entrepreneurs and people who are just like doing the thing
Yeah.
that is so in alignment with who they are. And the work that we do is helping them get even more in alignment of like making sure it's really connected to their values. But there are people who like look like they've got it all figured out, and it's like, I want to know how they got there. I want to know if it really feels like that all along the way. And you know, this is our chance to hear those stories and share them with an audience that hopefully will be as inspired as we are.
Well put.
And have we even said the name?
I think we've tiptoed around
We've
it.
tiptoed around it, and obviously you're logged in or watching this or hearing it, so you know it's called You Are the Prize. And today our first guest is kind of our origin story.
She is the first person that I ever said you were the prize to.
She's the original prize. She's the
original
OG
prize, the OG prize. Who is it?
It is our good friend, Amanda Rantuccio, who we're so excited to have here today. Besides just being a great friend of both of ours, we met her at Hulu. I'm just going to read her bio because she's done so much and it's all very impressive. She's a global marketing leader and storyteller. She's spent her career shaping brands across tech, travel, and entertainment. And after 2 decades at Apple, Hulu, and Expedia, she's stepped into a season of intentional reinvention. We love it. She's reimagining her life through the lens of alignment, community, and curiosity, which I know for Amanda means cooking and traveling and dragging her cat all over the world with her, which I love. She is currently writing a new chapter that's grounded in purpose over pressure, which makes it the perfect time to talk to her. And we're so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
First guest.
I know you said what makes us think we can have a podcast, and like what makes me think anyone wants me to be their first guest. But
We
thank
do.
you.
We do. Yeah. I mean, do you remember when we had that conversation?
It was dinner somewhere.
I think it was actually in a conference room.
I think it was at work. It
Yeah.
was at work, but we were talking about non-work things.
Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course.
You had gone on a date or something, and we're recapping, and I think he was a douchebag or something.
Sure.
And
Let's
you were kind of starting to be like, well, I didn't, and da-da-da-da. And I was like, no, Amanda, you're the prize. For everything that we just talked about, and then also just knowing you. And there was something, I think, in that statement and just like in that moment where it felt like a powerful reminder that, you know, we as people sometimes look for external validation and, well, he must not like me because of this, or I didn't get this job because of that. And it's like, no, actually, like, you have everything you need.
Yeah.
And I think that has now snowballed into a podcast.
Yeah.
Well, we said it a lot.
We
After
did.
that initial conversation, it became like a shorthand for like, know your worth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like, is this person worth it?
Yeah.
And like, don't forget that like everything that you've got is like, it's already in here. And I think, you know, like we said, like we all look for it outside of ourselves. We all think that when we get that thing, that person, that accolade, then you'll feel like it'll, like when you get the literal prize, you'll feel like the prize.
Yeah.
And it's just not the case. It just isn't.
And that you have agency in all of that. Like you are actually playing a part in it. And that's for me what always like, I feel like people have said that to me for so long, and until like probably the past year or two, I didn't like really understand that it's like you're a part of this. Like you're not just waiting to be chosen. You're not just, you know, waiting for this validation, whether it be from work or from a partner or somebody else. It's like that you actually get to determine like, do I like this person? Do I like this company? Do I like, you know, versus like, you know, do they like me? I hope they like me.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you think it's been, you know, in this last year and change that has made you kind of start to flip the switch there?
A lot of therapy.
We love our therapists.
Therapy. It
Yeah.
works over a long time.
Yeah.
I've been with my therapist for, well, since I was getting married and the wedding got called off. I started going to therapy, and I didn't talk about that. I talked about work. For 6 years, basically, I was just talking about work and like wanting to, you know, be successful at work. And she was trying to dive into other aspects of my life. And I was just like constantly talking about work. But that was like the the singular, focus of everything, and then kind of like the wheel, right? And then everything else in my life would come off of it, versus like a relationship, community, something else, myself. Yeah. And so, like once I recognized that and then started to try to flip that and what that would mean to make that center spoke of the wheel something that isn't work, then what happens? And then turns out it's like, whoa, that's so scary when you've lived your whole life a certain way, and then
you change the center, and it's like, of course it's destabilizing, but also it's exciting.
It is really exciting.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity in March of this year. There was redundancies at my company. I got a package. Was able to go to Italy for the summer, which I know is like not everyone can do that, but if you can, I would definitely recommend. And just having that time away. I've never taken a break. College, I always had like 2 to 3 jobs. Like until I was actually 30, I had 2 jobs, and so I just was always trying to work my way out of everything. And this was a moment where I didn't have work and I just had something else to focus on and really think about like, what is the life I would want to build if I was going to start over? And then having to prioritize other things and then having to make those decisions versus like something else driving all of your decisions is terrifying.
Yeah. Because you have a chance now to make the choice yourself, as opposed to, well, who's gonna, who's calling me to what city to do this job, that how could I refuse? Because it's like when you work for these great companies, it feels like a privilege. It feels like an honor to be asked. And you're like, well, I guess I have to move to this city I've never even considered. And now I know you're not doing that. Now you're actually making where you want to be and where you want to put roots down as a bigger priority. What does that feel like?
It's scary because like working for those companies, it's a shorthand for I've made it. I'm successful. I am doing the thing, right? I don't have a family. I don't have a husband, but I have this amazing job at this company that I actually truly respect. And so to change that and like go with what I truly believe is success, which is like a happy life and like community and friends, and let myself believe that that is what success is, and the life I want is, just like rewiring your brain. And it's not that I was like taught necessarily that my parents weren't like big career people. I don't know where I kind of like started glomming onto that. I think it was just a place where I was given great feedback. And so then I was like, oh, more of that. That feels good. And so chasing that, because you couldn't get that validation necessarily from a partner or but maybe you don't need that validation, right? And that's what you're trying to say with like, you're the prize. Like you don't need to be seeking this outside validation.
Although if a partner could give me a raise every year, I might change my tactic, but totally. So what was your, what was like post-college life like?
So I grew up in a small town in the Panhandle of Florida. Well, mostly. My dad was in the military, so moved a ton before that. And then from age 10 to 17 in Niceville, Florida. And, I think a lot of jobs there, it was like you can be a doctor, you can be a teacher, like typical, all-American town jobs. And then I would see on like movies, people living in the big city having like a cool apartment, and they were always in advertising. So I was like, that's what I'm gonna do, right? Because I wanted to get out of that small town and I wanted to like do something else. And I didn't know anyone personally who had a job that was outside of the military or some, kind of like standard job. And I thought, well, that's cool. Like, that's my ticket out. So that's how I started. And then, once you kind of get in the machine of advertising and everyone's cool, like all your friends, I made all of my friends there, you guys like, and then moved to LA eventually after doing The Bachelor, which if you need a change, you should just move.
Not necessarily.
Not do reality TV. But I
come back to the
But I come to LA for that show and I really liked it. So I moved out, started at like a big agency in LA, Deutsch, which was great. Worked on Taco Bell, which was like my favorite brand as a teenager.
And an adult.
And an adult, and still to this day. And then eventually got a call from Apple, which I had never even thought about working at Apple. And so then I worked there, and kind of like every job I've had since I moved to LA has been someone recruiting me, right?
Yeah.
Either like someone I knew, someone that knew someone I knew. And so I kind of just kept bouncing from city to city, job to job, based on what somebody else was offering.
Totally.
Versus me saying,
Hold
I
on.
want to move to San Francisco,
Yeah.
and I want to work at this company, or I want to move to
Yeah.
LA and I want to do this, or I want to move to, England. The only places that I've moved to because I wanted to, one was LA, and then Austin during the pandemic. So, and those were the places I was happiest. So it's like interesting that
The internal
Yeah.
compass actually was leading you
yes,
to the place that was most aligned with who
Yeah.
you are, right? And it's
Yeah.
funny actually that your first move was probably your most aligned, where you were like, I have an idea of what my adulthood should
Yeah.
look like, or like there were things about those lives that you saw in movies that you were
Yeah.
like, I want that.
Yeah.
And you said, I want that from deep inside of
Yeah.
you. And you went and you stopped on a reality TV show on your way. But like, if you get the chance, why not?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But and then Austin too was another one where you felt drawn to that place.
Yeah, I was living in the Panhandle with my parents during COVID for a few months, and going a little crazy. And it is, if you take I-10 West, you end up in Austin. And I had some friends from LA and New York that had all gone there during COVID, and it just felt like a right mix of like community, like smaller city, but still like big city kind of thoughts, I guess you could say.
Sure, yeah.
So I felt comfortable there,
Yeah.
and I just was kind of making this life there. And then, we were going to have to go back to work. I was going to have to come back to, work in person, kind of going to have to come back to work in LA. And then a friend who's an old coworker was like, well, you can come take this job in England. And I was like, I've always wanted to live in Europe. So took that. And then it's just like you get to these places, or I got to these places, San Francisco, London, and physically didn't feel at home there,
Yeah.
but felt like I'm not giving it enough of a chance.
Yeah.
Or like,
this is what I should
this
be
is
doing.
like,
yeah.
yes. And this is like, everyone thinks this is the best city in the world.
Yeah.
And I love that city, but it just didn't feel right. And it's like, and maybe it's for a season, maybe there'll be a different time where that will be the right place. But like my therapist always says, like, how does it feel in your body? And I used to think she was crazy. I was like, I don't know. Or like, where is it in your body?
Where is
She
it?
always
Yeah.
asks.
And I'm like, my chest is on fire. Stop asking me. Yeah.
But I remember the first time she asked that, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like, I guess like
totally.
here, and she'd be like, let's hold it.
Yeah.
And it all felt so like woo-woo and weird. And then you start realizing like, no, your body is actually telling you helping guide you, if you just listen to yourself.
Which you're not taught.
No.
Like, I mean, that wasn't, I think I didn't grow up in a family that was like, well, how does it feel in your body when this happens? It was like, you just don't, that is the first thing you learn to turn off is, what is it, what does it feel like for me? Because it's like, well, you should be thinking about what does it feel like for everybody else? Or what does it look like? What does somebody else need?
Yeah.
And then you shut that down.
Yeah.
So you don't even recognize. I'm like, what does it feel like? I'm like, I guess it feels hungry.
Yeah.
Like,
we were always taught to push it down and like get through it, because especially being a military brat, like, the government is sending you to different cities.
Sure.
My parents aren't picking where we're moving next.
Yeah.
And it was like, I always knew I wasn't going to be somewhere too long either. So it was like, okay, I can get through this, right? So even now as an adult, like even, in both of those places, or even in relationships, I'll be like, I'm not going to bring something up because you're just going to hunker down.
yeah.
And then we'll get through this. And that, and it turns out it's like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, it works for like a while.
Yeah.
And then it comes out bigger and in different ways, or like out the side.
Yeah.
And it's always much worse.
Yeah.
If you like didn't. But I think, the idea of resilience was resilience was a word that was like prized.
Yes.
Like where it's like, oh, she's so resilient.
Yep.
It's like, this bad thing happened, but look at her go.
Yeah.
And like never a pause for like, oh, she actually had a appropriate emotional response
Yep.
to this thing.
Yeah.
It was not, and I'm not blaming like my family or whatever, but
Yeah.
I'm like, that just was kind of the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, and also like it's a kind of a mind fuck when you tell somebody, I work at Apple, or such and such flew me to London to work there, because their faces light up.
Yep.
And then you think like, okay, well, I must be doing something right
Yep.
because this person is impressed, but actually I'm like crying myself to sleep every night, or eating, or whatever it is. Insert the coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you kind of start to realize like, well, this doesn't feel right. In my
Yeah.
body, this doesn't feel right. There's a reason why I'm coping, all that stuff. And then you kind of like, once you have that realization, it's really hard to go back
Yeah.
and just like
Yeah.
keep pretending, because it's
Yeah.
that much more painful.
Yeah. I think I'm in this like tricky situation right now because I think y'all are a little further maybe in your acceptance of where you are and also what you want. And I'm more of like, okay, I know I don't want to prioritize work, but work is still very important to me as it is for you. But I really want to prioritize like living where I want, building community, maybe buying a house, settling down, building something. Like I have a couch I've had for 20 years from IKEA because I'm too afraid to buy a couch.
Totally, yeah.
Like, because
totally,
will it go? Because I'm going to keep moving,
Yeah.
And so now I'm looking for a new role, and like different roles will come up, and it'll be like this amazing job in New York or this amazing job in Copenhagen. And it's like, no, I want to go to Austin. But my brain will go, but that's like a really good title.
Yeah.
And that's a really good person to work for,
Yeah.
or a really good company. And like that would look really good on your resume.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I even thinking about my resume? Like this isn't
And like,
what I
for who?
want to
For
be
what
building
next
towards.
thing are you building this resume for?
Yeah.
So how do you walk yourself back from that? Like, so you've gone down the like, oh, I could end up in like kind of the place I've ended up before.
Yeah.
How do you walk yourself back to remembering, okay, I actually have a North Star right now, and it's putting roots down. It's being in a place I love.
Yeah. I think I have to remind myself of like how I actually felt my body. And when I was in those like kind of suffer through it,
I'm like breathing. Yeah.
And then breathing and like how I feel now.
Yeah.
And how do I maintain this? And then I have an amazing therapist coach who just will be like, okay, well, let's like talk through that, and then you kind of have to remember like, no, because then I'm just going to end up, if I do that, if I follow that same path and like letting that be my guiding light, I'm going to end up back in that place where I was. And so it's just trying something new. And I can always go back to that, but I think eventually I'll realize I won't want to. Yeah. Because now where you are, you're.
Yeah. I mean, I went through the exercise and it took 2 years of my therapist saying, how are your values and actions in alignment? And then I was like, I don't know what my values are.
Yeah.
And so that was like a process of like listening and waiting. And then that led to kind of a mantra. And then I saw a clip of Trevor Noah asking Oprah, like, what's one piece of advice you would give people? And she was like, most people don't know what they want. Most people are just doing things to get by the day to day. And she said, as soon as you know what you want, everything falls in alignment to support that dream or goal.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that was it.
Keeps bringing it.
Always.
And that was probably another 6 months or year of like, what do you want? And then having to like pull apart what is a want versus a desire versus a in the moment need.
Yeah.
And ultimately I came to, I want to maximize my free time. I was tired of coming home, at 7:00 at night and not having energy to hang out with my dog. And I was like, and deciding between vacation and family and da-da-da-da. And I was just like, I want free time. But that's really hard to like decide that when you have social media in your face or when you're getting promotions and you're really good at your job and you're excelling, but then you're going to bed at night and you're kind of just like, this feels like
it doesn't feel like success, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's supposed to be the definition of success. It's like, and so why doesn't it feel that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had times in my career where I'm like, I'm just checking my bank balance to be like, you can do it, just stay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because just stay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, that is so sad
Yeah.
to just like be it, and that's the external stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is the it's also a huge risk to
Yeah.
like be like, I no longer care about stability,
Yeah.
Yes.
security, like
And to trust you'll be okay.
to
Yeah.
trust that like
Yeah.
you'll make a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me feel better if Oprah said it, honestly.
Yeah. That everything will come
If
into
Yeah.
it's all gonna line up as soon as I decide what I
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But also it's hard, like you get into that flow and now you have a husband and 2 kids and a mortgage and you're supporting your family.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, well, doesn't matter what I want. I have like,
stuck in this.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I do still think that there's room to be able to
Totally.
do that, because ultimately on the other end, you're going to be a better partner, a better mom or
Yeah.
dad or whatever, because you're true to yourself and
Yeah.
what you need. And
I remember on my 40th birthday, which was during COVID, I got a video from one of my friends had like reached out to people and had people like, you know, say something,
yeah.
whatever. So the video, it was beautiful, like so sweet that all these people had submitted answers and stuff. And I'm watching this video and it's like, Amanda, like you are, and like all I could hear is you work a lot. You work so hard. And I was like, oh my God. Like this is what my friends, my nearest and dearest think of me. And they meant it in the nicest possible way.
It's,
And
you are so successful. Look
yes.
at you.
Yeah. Like, and you're such a hard worker. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, it was like, this is your life being
Yeah.
played. And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah.
like, this is like not what I want. You know, and there was like other kind things people were saying, but that was all I could hear.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to change.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I think that was a moment where it all started, you know, but is that being reflected back of, you know,
Yeah.
this is who you are,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Speaking of things being reflected back at you and circling back to reality television,
Yeah.
you were on an early season of The Bachelor.
It was season 12, but it was in
It felt
And
early.
it's like season 147 now.
2007.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you made it to the top 3.
3.
Well, I'm curious what that is like when you are literally trying to be the prize, not in like a tongue-in-cheek way, but you're like, the goal is to be married. And
Yeah.
like, what was that? How did that process play out with you?
Yeah. I think it's weird. It's actually like a good, like a metaphor. Is that the right word
Mhm.
for like
Analogy or something?
Yeah. Where you're like thrust into this. I thought it was just going to be like a fun thing. I remember my boss at the time was like, you'll either be back here after day 1 because you'll be like, I don't like this, or you're going to make it to the end. He's like, that's what he thought. And I was like, sure. But you're put into this situation where you're not allowed to talk about anything else. You're not allowed to think about any, like kind of control what you talk about. And you don't have your phone, and you don't have books, and you don't have magazines.
Not even books.
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. And
Wow.
so, you know, it's the focus of your whole life at that point. And so then there's this person that you're being told is an amazing person. So it's kind of similar to like you're being told this is a great company, this is a great job. And so then you're like, well, I should like this person, you know, and I should try to like make them like me, you know? And so you end up like in this whole cycle. And then at the end you're like, did I even like them? Like, did we even have anything in common? Like, but you're kind of thrust into this experiment, which is kind of similar, I think, to like corporate life and, you know, wanting to be successful and wanting to thrive. Which I don't know. It's like a weird.
It doesn't center you.
No.
It
And then you're
trying to win.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking like, is this what I want?
Yeah.
You know, is this? And so I remember a good guy friend of mine, like I was talking to him like probably about dating some loser. And he was like, stop trying to be chosen. He's like, you live your life like you're on The Bachelor still. And you're like, just trying to be chosen. And I was so mad because I was like, I'm not
How
like
dare
that.
you?
Yeah, like I'm not desperate. Like, you know, I'm not trying to be chosen. But then it's like that is how I've been living like my life, and with work or, you know, with men, and yeah, just trying to make sure that I get the gold star and that I get chosen, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so common. I think that like for men and women, it's like we live in a society that tells us that winning that's the prize. Is like literally the prize is the prize.
Yeah.
And it's out here and you should all be running toward it.
Yeah.
That is where your worth is. That's how you'll know you're good. That's how like And I mean, I think also like a lot for women, the chosen thing around relationships, because it's like, well, your worth is getting picked to be someone's wife.
Yep.
And once you've done that, then great that you get to reach the next level of
Yep.
like womanhood or
Yep.
something. And whether you actually believe that internally or not, that's like told what your marker of success is. And everything's oriented toward that. And
Yeah.
like little kids realize it so early.
Yeah.
Like little girls are like into makeup and all of these things like through the male gaze of like trying to be little wives.
Yep.
So young.
Yep.
Before they even realize like what that means or any of the things. And it's like, so if from the very earliest years of your life you're being oriented in this way, that has nothing to do with like how does that feel in your body?
No.
If do you want that? Do any of those
Yeah.
things? Of course, you're like you're just on a path before you
Yeah.
realize that there's like even a path to choose.
Yep.
I'm smiling because I just got a flash of myself in kindergarten, daycare, always wanting to wear the heeled booties and run the kitchen. Because that was going to be my role as I grew up. The heeled booties are still there.
Yeah.
You got there.
I got there. I sure did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was an aside.
No, and I think it's like there is so well that was coming from inside of you. Actually.
Yeah, that actually
yeah.
was-
Like, that's an example of like you were being pulled from something deep inside of you.
Totally.
Where
yeah.
it's like it was, and like good on you for like
Yeah,
following
yeah,
that path.
yeah.
And maybe it wasn't linear, and
Yeah.
you were probably told that like you shouldn't want the heeled booties and the
No,
kitchen.
yeah.
The kitchen's for the ladies.
Yeah.
But it's like it would be so much better if we weren't all just like pushed out. It's like, here's society, go fulfill one of these very few roles.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we've been talking about how like, what, 2 generations ago, or maybe even one, the number of jobs that were like available, or like what university programs women
Yeah.
were even allowed to enroll
Yeah.
in were very limited.
Yep.
And now it's like, now we can all do anything in theory.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of us are still like, well, I'd like to be a wife.
Yeah.
And you're like, really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally be a wife if you want to.
If you want to do that,
Yeah.
do that.
But that was how you won.
Yeah.
Like that's how you won the game of life as a woman, was to marry well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to like, because you couldn't have your own success. And so I think it's just so ingrained in us to like, you know, the way to gain success is to be chosen.
Yeah.
And so as humans, you know, it's
Yeah.
just, we're still in that phase. But
yeah.
yeah,
But then you
it's
put the chosen thing on all the things. Like you said, it is similar to like, okay, so you're bringing this mentality,
Yep.
this particular game that you've been playing
Yep.
forever is now being applied to jobs. You
Yep.
know, it's like this thing that you spend all of your time doing.
Yep.
And if your only criteria is, are they good and did they want me?
Yep.
What is the likelihood that that's going to be a fit?
Yep.
Most of the time, or hardly any of the
Yeah.
time. But yet we all do it because you're like, well, I'm going to make these trade-offs and it'll be fine and I
Yeah.
won't have to do
Yeah.
it forever.
Yeah.
And I can make another choice later.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what if you made the choice right now to do the thing that felt good? So how do we get you to Austin?
I mean, yeah, I was talking with my therapist about wanting something too much. So when you were saying like creating like your list of like, what do I want? And like, what are my values and all that? I was like, do you end up jinxing it? And she's like, that's not how this works. Like if I want this life and I say I want these things, then will it never happen? Because actually that's what I want to happen. And so no, I'm trying to like really stay focused on that, like working on, you know, that whole thing of if not that, then something better will come. And so, yeah, trying to find a job that works with the life I want versus creating a life based around the job I have. And so kind of just flipping that a little bit and making that center spoke really like the life I want and then a job that works with that life, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been, I've only been back from Italy for a couple months now and just trying to like really keep that the focus and, you know, put blinders on to like other opportunities that aren't going to align like with this path that I've selected.
Yeah.
Good.
I was gonna say, what took you to Italy? Like, what inspired that?
So I've always wanted to like go lived there for a while. I took Italian classes. My dad's extended family is all in Sicily. And I think it actually ended up being the perfect place to have this transition moment, because what they prioritize there is having a good life. And their version of success, I remember the first time I met my dad's extended family, I worked at Apple, and I was like, they're gonna be so impressed. Like the American cousin that works at Apple. And I remember I was over there and I was like, yeah, I work at Apple. And they're like, okay, but like, where do you live? And I was like, oh, in San Francisco. They're like, so what do you do there? And I was like, well, I get on the
Ride
bus
the
at
bus
6
for 2
a.m.
hours,
and
yeah.
I get to Cupertino. And I get home at 9 p.m. and I get fried chicken at Buy Right.
Yeah.
That was my life.
Yeah.
And they were like, wow, your life is so sad.
Yeah.
And so because their life there, it's not about, nobody talks about what job they have.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about like their palatial mansion or anything like that, or like their really fancy car. I don't know if you'd even want a fancy car there, because the driving in Sicily is its own experience. But like they care about hanging out with their family, like going out on the boat, like going to the beach, like having really good meals, like drinking good wine. You know, they don't care about the definition of success there is so different than the definition of success in America. That it was like this refreshing like reframe of like, what do I want? And like, what do I want to be successful? What do I want success to be defined as? So it was the best place I could have had that kind of break and moment of, you know, finding clarity and like really able to like distill, like, what do I want moving forward?
And what did that feel like in your body? You know, like being in Sicily.
Oh my God.
It's like, could you compare, like while you were there, could you remember what it felt like with this other definite, you know, it's like if you were there and that felt right, what did rightness feel like?
I felt like calm and at ease. And like, you don't have like, you know, there's like the shoulder thing. And like, if you're thinking about like where it shows up in your body, like that tension, because it's not the way we should be living. You know, we shouldn't be living for like the nice car and all that. I mean, that's great to have, but you know, once you kind of are in a place and you're like, okay, this feels right, your whole body seems to relax, or mine does at least, you know.
You had when we were chatting before the show, you had a good analogy about driving in Italy.
Oh God, yeah.
And like, can you?
Yeah, I feel like the lessons of driving in Sicily are like lessons I kind of will take for the rest of my life, which is that like nobody else wants to get in an accident either. And you're driving and there's like a Nona that's driving like 5 miles an hour, and then there's somebody behind you and they're on your ass and they're like flicking their lights and doing this, and then you're driving through these, you know, tiny roads, and then you're like, can't even see, is the car gonna fit through these 2 buildings? But somehow it just all works out. Like if you just kind of like give into it and trust that nobody else actually wants to get into an accident either, like it's going to be okay and it'll all work out. So it's like once I started relaxing and just being like, nobody else wants to get into an accident. So, and then it ends up, you're okay, you know, it'll be fine. But
they have a phrase for it, isn't it? It's like a sort of like an all's well that ends well kind of.
Tutto bene quelle finisce bene. So like everything, all's well that ends well, you know. They have a lot of sayings there. But yeah,
Italians.
They're all about like, no stress. Like no stress. Like that's what their teacher would say all the time, you know? And because I was in class with a bunch of Americans, Germans, Swiss, and we all just wanted to be, you know, good at this. And we wanted the gold star from the teacher in this Italian class. And she was like, you guys need to calm down.
I feel like those 3 nationalities for an Italian person
to handle it.
German, what is it? German,
Swiss.
German, Swiss, and American are up there with making sure everything works and looks and
and you're like, which one of us do you like the best?
And they're like,
none of them.
Again, that's not the point.
Not at all. You're here to learn Italian. And you're like, but who's the price?
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so Austin, what are you most looking forward to building in Austin?
I'm hoping, or I will, build a life where I feel like I can be settled and like buy a couch and know that I'm going to be somewhere for a minute and not be kind of chasing or looking to something outside of me to like,
Yeah.
you know, put me on a new path. Like I can actually like establish my own path moving forward. And you know, I've told Lex like I don't have to be there forever. Like I'm already like
what if you just even for this one sentence committed to like I'm going to stay here?
Yeah.
Have you ever like reframed it where you're like I'm going to do this forever?
That is wildly terrifying to me.
But then like unless something changes.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like I often approach things where like when I moved to San Francisco, it was on a whim. But I move in. I mean, I move into a hotel room. Like I live here now. I'm gonna die here.
Yeah.
And I like that's my mentality. I'm just like I'm locked in. And like when I moved to San Francisco, I was like, yeah, I'll live here forever. And then like LA came up, and like I live here now, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna live here forever.
But you're also really good at. I mean, you're good at quitting. You're good at saying.
I love to quit things.
Yeah, and I personally like. I feel like I have to like. I'm like, no, I have to do this thing. I have to stay.
Like because if you said to yourself, I'm doing this forever, then you have to do it forever.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm just really good at not keeping my word to myself.
Which has served you well.
Commitment means nothing to me.
Yeah, I feel like I need, but I'm also changing and figuring out what things want. I think like I didn't know what I wanted up until recently. Like I just didn't go through that exercise, and it was my friends are doing this, so this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and you just like go down that chute and ladder or whatever, and then you wake up and you're like, what the hell am I doing?
Which is so weird because we were talking about like we used to do this for brands.
Yeah.
And it would be like, what's your why?
Yeah.
Like, what do you believe?
Yeah.
And if you were to ask any of us that, we were probably like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? You know, but it matters the most.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, hopefully like younger generations are starting to take a different approach to life, you know. Lex and I were talking to bring it back to Oprah again.
Always
Oprah, I love her. She has a podcast, Oprah's Super Soul, and I would listen to it all the time as I was like on the bus down to Apple. And they were talking about soul ages, I think with Deepak Chopra, but I can't remember exactly. And they were talking about if you take all the soul ages and make it, just say there's 10, Oprah wouldn't be a 10, she'd be a 9. And because she's trying too hard, and she's like, and he was saying like the person that's a 10 is the person that you would think they're not living up to their potential because they aren't trapped by society's definition of success. The person that's a 10 that's been here the most, you know, and
is actually looks less ambitious and is just go with the flow.
Because they know the true meaning of a successful life.
Yeah, that's what I'm still working on.
But it makes sense because why wouldn't you just want to stop and look at the trees all day and just like have this beautiful life that's naturally doing its thing, not necessarily pass you over, but pass by you, and then you get to be in the moment and watch it versus being in the rat race and trying to
I had said I would love to wrap this up with like you're at a crossroads and I want us to get an update from you in a few months, and it better be from Austin. And so
it is one of those things where you're talking about if you speak about something, that also makes it true, and it like makes you like more accountable to that, right?
Because now you've publicly said, and now everyone's gonna be hoping to hear that you made it to Austin. You've got a dream, a job that's just
makes it work.
I
feel good in my body.
And like that's what we all hope.
And then the universe conspires because you're on the right path.
I mean, to your point about, you know, marketing and starting with the why, like, I don't know if this is sadly or what, but I actually took a marketing brief approach to my life. And I was like, okay, if we can, you know, sell multi-billion dollars worth of product with a brief, how do I apply that to my life? And like that really worked. And there were success KPIs and stuff like that. But sometimes you just like need a little bit of that structure to be like, okay, this is my one foot in front of the other. And, but yeah, I mean, I think as long as you have like an overarching of what you want, then the location and the job and that kind of stuff will just figure itself out. As like reckless as that sounds. we really don't have a ton of control over.
We think we do. We
No.
like to think that
We
we
like
to
have
think,
the
yeah.
control. And I think that's why it's like when somebody offers you security, you kind of jump at it because
Yep.
you're like, oh, great. That thing's taken care
Yep.
of.
Mhm.
And then like, you know,
Yeah.
but when you really take a leap and you're like, oh, I want this thing, you're like, but there's an awful lot of things that need to line up for me to
Yep.
get this thing. And
Yeah.
that's risky.
Yeah.
And it's on you, like,
Right.
versus like, you know, I'm moving for this company and like, you know, I don't know, like for some reason that feels like you are actually giving up some of the
Mhm.
control, and then it becomes not your fault if it doesn't work out
Mhm.
versus like I decided I was going to move here and do this
Yep.
and make these decisions, you know.
Yeah. But then also it's like if you play that out, so what if it doesn't work out? Like what does that mean? What does it mean
Yeah.
about you, or what does it mean
Yeah.
about the choice that you made?
Yeah.
That you know, you
Mhm.
made a mistake, and it's even like sometimes it's like hard to even say like, oh God, I made a mistake.
But it's not even a mistake. It's just it's life.
It turned out differently
Yeah.
than I hoped.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's hard to. I try really hard not to live with the idea of regrets.
Yeah.
Because it is what it is.
And it's a lesson.
Yeah.
And it's a
all the things,
lesson,
yeah.
and it like, okay, now next time I get to the intersection, I'll turn left instead
Yeah.
of turning
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Because I like.
But at least you were an active player and made the decision
Yeah.
versus just like ping-ponging around based on whatever else life was throwing at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're rooting for you in Austin or wherever else, or back in LA.
Yeah.
Or Sicily.
Lex's neighbor has
Yeah.
a place that's for rent. Maybe she's trying to get me in there.
I have been. I'm like, I already
Yeah.
told her
It
how
looks
much it
cool.
costs.
Yeah.
I'm like, please move in.
Yeah.
You could be in LA.
It does
Yeah.
look cool.
Yeah, you could hang
Yeah.
a Texas Longhorn
Yeah,
or
I
something
think
in
it's
there.
no matter where I end up, as long as I am starting to be the person like actively deciding and
Yeah.
you know being the like person driving my own life forward
Mhm.
versus waiting for life to make the decisions
Yep.
for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
That I think will be successful.
Yeah.
No matter where I end up.
And that's really empowering because it takes you from like a passive
Yeah.
participant to like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Because nobody's going to come rescue you.
No. And it doesn't matter if they choose you because it's like, what are you choosing?
Yeah.
Right, because you can get chosen, you can get the job, you can
Yep.
get the guy, you can get, and then look around and be like, well, I didn't want any of these
Yeah.
things. And
Exactly.
so, what did it mean that you got chosen? That you could
Yeah.
like, other people could understand where you existed in the world,
Yep.
and sometimes that's hard to not hold. You know, it has weight, right?
Yep.
But I think the greater weight is like, does this feel good? Is this right? Did I choose it?
Yep.
Well,
That's how you know you're at a 10.
Right.
yeah.
And maybe that takes the pressure off. Like, let's be real. None of us are 10s on our soul
Like-
ages.
No.
So
we all care way too much.
we all care. We're too ambitious, just getting in our own way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, none of us are going to do it perfectly. And even once you're like, okay, I have a new center of my wheel and I'm
Yep.
going to be oriented toward this thing. Of course, there's going to be, I think this is like exactly when you're going to get a bunch of offers that are going to ask you
Tests.
to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's like, just consider them tests
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Yeah.
But we are going to follow up with you
Okay.
and no pressure, but
Make you proud.
please make us proud.
No, not us. You. Make you proud.
Make me proud,
Yes.
Damn
She's
it.
so close.
yeah. So close. I did feel like I wanted to get a 10 when you were like, none of us are 10s. And I was like, but I'm trying to be a 10.
Yeah, but right. You're like,
You're like, but
because-
now I'm a 10. I wasn't
Yeah.
a 10 before, but
Yeah,
now that I
yeah.
did the brief. And
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
right, my soul aged.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, no, I think I'm gonna need a few more rolls around here before I'm getting close to like. I mean, if Oprah's not a 10,
So then
I'm probably like a 6. I'm like a
That's it.
new
We
soul.
should probably look into that. Maybe that's an episode.
Right.
Yeah. Of what our soul age is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel like this life for me is going to be a very, like, maybe jump from a 2 to a 3 or something. You know, like it's like I can feel myself like in
Oh, yeah.
Growing.
such a different
expanding.
place than I was like in my 20s or
Yeah.
my 30s, you know?
But we're also more aware too. Like,
Yeah.
that's such a weird age because you are kind of feeling like I am the prize and I'm doing these things and
Yes.
I'm out of my parents' house and I'm da 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 da. And there's like a small window of being able to like enjoy that before
Life hits you.
life hits you,
And
but
insecurity hits you.
and insecurity hits you, but it is like such a good feeling, I guess, in your body of now that we're in our 40s or whatever, and we're starting to turn that corner. It's like taking the backpack off, and you're just like, oh,
yeah,
I do just want to like sit on the couch all day and not worry about anything.
Yep.
Or I want to go on an adventure and not have it be a 5-person trip, but it's just me because I want to go watch the leaves change somewhere or whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
That's so nice.
Yeah, thanks.
Watching the leaves.
Yeah. Definitely something a 10 would do.
Yeah. That's 10 behavior.
Yeah, that's 10 behavior. Oh, that's a t-shirt. That's 10 behavior.
We'll add it for our merch.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for
Thanks
joining
for
us
having
and being our
me.
first guest.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
forever part of our origin story, and just like, and I think, you know, it's serendipitous. Like, this has been a 6 or 7 year journey, and this is how long it takes sometimes. And it's been cool to sit on the couch with you and reminisce about other stuff.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank
We'll have you
you.
back for sure. We'll be in Austin with you.
Yes. That's
We
where
could-
the update should
Oh,
Yeah.
we can record an episode in Austin.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, great.
Cool.
We'll take that as an invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us at our very first episode of You Are the Prize. Please like and subscribe and catch us here next week. You Are the Prize is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at youaretheprize_pod.
This was a Studio Stab production in collaboration with the Champ Effect and Alt Entertainment. Music by Scott Martin.